كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات، كربلائي كربلائي، كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات، كربلائي كربلائي، كن رفيقي كربلائي. كربلائي كربلائي، كن رفيقي كربلائي. ذي حكاية الولاء من فلات كربلاء، علمت شبابها كيف تحفظ الصلاة، علمت عن أولياء، عن شباب أوفياء، أرخصوا مهر الدماء واشتروا عرض السماء، بالدماء وقعوا على الوصية، مهرهم رضا الأمير والزكية، يدخلون للجنان آمنين، كوثرا يسقيهم الولي ريا، بالدماء وقعوا على الوصية، مهرهم رضا الأمير والزكية، يدخلون للجنان آمنين، كوثرا يسقيهم الولي ريا. في العلاء في العلاء، كن رفيقي كربلائي. في العلاء في العلاء، كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات، كربلائي كربلائي، كن رفيقي كربلائي. كربلائي كربلائي، كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن كقاسم البطل، لا تمن بالأمل، فالفناء في الحسن أشهى من طعم العسل. كن كأكبر علي بالعطاء الأكمل، جود بكل ما لديك في محبة الولي، لا نبالي إن وقعنا في المنون، نحن أهل الحق أصحاب اليقين، لا نهاب الموت لا ولن نهونا، للحسين نرخص دم الوتين، لا نبالي إن وقعنا في المنون، نحن أهل الحق أصحاب اليقين، لا نهاب الموت لا ولن نهونا، للحسين نرخص دم الوتين. بالفداء بالفداء، كن رفيقي كربلائي، بالفداء بالفداء كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات. كربلائي كربلائي كن رفيقي كربلائي، كربلائي كربلائي كن رفيقي كربلائي. ذا زهير ذا حبيب بايع صدق الغريب، وقع على اللواء من دم النحر الخضيب. ذاك عمرو ذاك جون، خير ناصر وعون. إن بيعة الحسين لم تكن يوما للوم. جن عابس بحبه وهما، يفتدي ببذل روحه الإمامة. ينذر الأنفاس في هوى الحبيب، عاشق الحسين بالعشق استقاما. جن عابس بحبه وهما، يفتدي ببذل روحه الإمامة. ينذر الأنفاس في هوى الحبيب، عاشق الحسين بالعشق استقاما. بالولاء بالولاء كن رفيقي كربلائي، بالولاء بالولاء كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات. كربلائي كربلائي كن رفيقي كربلائي، كربلائي كربلائي كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات. كربلائي كربلائي كن رفيقي كربلائي. كن حسيني الولاء والثبات، عش حسيني الحياة للممات. كربلائي كربلائي كن.
ثانية على الحب الحسين عليه السلام. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد وآل محمد
وثالثة لتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our respected scholar and dear families, welcome to night 4 of the holy nights of Muharram. Tonight, we commemorate the mother of the 4 children, sacrificed for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the symbol of patience and sacrifice, al-Baneen, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayha. The Almighty says in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, you will not attain righteousness until you give from that which is dear to you. Donations, my brothers and sisters, allow us the level of righteousness when they're given not from the things we don't care about, but the things that we actually hold dear. This night we dedicate to this magnanimous lady is to reflect on her donations, on her 4 children, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on behalf of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, and to reflect on her incredible character. 1, a wife decorated with manners and ethics, one who put others before herself, and that is why she was recommended a wife to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And 2, a great symbol of sacrifice, allowing her 4 children to fight on behalf of Hussein alayhi salam and be martyred in Karbala. And upon the arrival of the Husseini caravan after Karbala, she did not even ask about her children and only asked about the Imam, to teach us that the Imam comes before everything and everyone, and that the Imam and his safety and well-being come before everything. And we learn about Karbala to teach our souls to be like al-Baneen. Please help me welcome our Karbala teacher, Sheikh Mahdi Rastani, with a salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون. الذي لا يدركه بعد الهمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن. الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت معدود ولا أجل ممدود أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم تلك حدود الله ومن يطع الله ورسوله يدخله جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وذلك الفوز العظيم ومن يعص الله ورسوله ويتعد حدوده يدخله نارا خالدا فيها وله عذاب مهين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات الله For the love of our beloved Prophet and his beloved progeny, a second loud salawat. For the hastening in the return of our beloved 12th Imam, a third final loud salawat. The topic that we'll be discussing tonight, inshallah, is the topic and the answer to the question, is Islam a simple religion or a complex one? This is a question that as we discuss the discussion, you will realize the importance and how crucial of an answer or a question it is to answer. The reality is, when you look at how Islam emerged in the Arabian Peninsula during the time of the Prophet, the speed at which Islam was growing, the speed at which Islam spread throughout the lands was very fascinating. Up to this day, historians still refer back to the time of the Prophet to understand what elements were there in the message of the Holy Prophet that made his message spread so quickly and so fastly. It spread across nations, it spread across cultures, it spread across lands in a very quick way. And one of those elements that they pinpoint that explains for us the speed with which Islam spread throughout the lands was the simplicity that Islam had in its basic, most fundamental teachings and tenets. And you see this simplicity very clearly in the concept of Tawheed. In the concept of Tawheed, you find a very simple, straightforward concept. There is only one God, La ilaha illahu, there's no God but Him. And if there's any other human being or any other being out there, they are none but His servants. When you compare this to some of the other faiths that existed at that time, Christianity, for example, that continues up to today, you find the concept of Tawheed in Islam and the concept of the Trinity in Christianity are quite different from this angle. Tawheed, pretty simple and straightforward, at least at the basic level. Trinity, on the other hand, a little bit more complicated to digest and understand. So this is the simplicity that we find in Islam, but then you also find certain areas of the faith and of the religion that seem to be quite complex as well. Sometimes you might want to go through the basic rulings of praying, the basic rulings of fasting, and all of a sudden you pick up the book of Ayatollah Sistani Islamic Laws, you start to flip through this book page to page, and immediately you start to realize that there are hundreds of rulings that are written down in this book. If you wanted to read through the portion of Salat in this book, you might be reading for a couple days at least. And so the question that comes to mind is Islam a simple or a complex religion? Is it simple, meaning I can summarize the whole faith into a couple simple, universal moral teachings? Sometimes you speak to people, they'll speak of Islam in this fashion and in this form. They'll tell you, listen, you might have had loved ones who speak like this. You might have thought yourself this way sometimes. They'll say, listen, don't overcomplicate the faith. Don't overthink it. Islam's message for us is very simple. Be a good person, pray, fast. That's it. That's all Islam has to offer. This person will tell you, listen, it's not about abiding by all the detailed rulings we have in Islam. Only thing Islam wants from you is to have a pure heart. Be a good person at your heart. Be a good person at your core. The rest of these details, the rest of all this other headache, they'll tell you this is the work of scholars. Over time they came, they added more and more details. Now we find ourselves in this situation. You want to pray, there's hundreds of rulings. You want to fast, there's hundreds of rulings. You want to get married, there's hundreds of rulings, and so on and so forth. The answer to this question is extremely crucial, and this is why during these special nights I'm taking out one night to answer this question. Because before we get to some of the more trendy topics like music and so on and so forth, first we have to have a proper understanding of this faith of ours. Otherwise, when we go further, we will struggle to understand Islam properly. If the answer to this question is that Islam is a simple, basic religion that has a number of consequences for us. Number one, that means that I don't have to constantly learn about this faith. I don't have to spend time day in and day out, every Muharram, every Ramadan, come and sit here. I already know what the faith wants to tell me. What's the point? Why do I have to invest so much time anyways? This is number one. Number two, and most importantly, if the details that we have and we've heard of is not really part of Islam, and God doesn't really care about these details so much, well then I can just walk away and dismiss them in my life. I don't need to spend too much time on them. If we can recite a salawat, I think there's a little bit of echo on the mic. Let us take a moment, recite a loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli. One more loud salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. The second consequence is that this person says, well, if Islam is a simple religion, then the detailed teachings of Islam are not important for us anymore. I don't have to spend so much time thinking about how exactly I'm supposed to pray, how exactly I'm supposed to fast, taharat, nijasat, all of these headaches. We can dismiss all these detailed rulings. Be a good person at your heart, and khalas, that's done. That's Islam. This is number two. And number three, the third consequence, is that, well, all these details that were added to the religion of Islam must have been the work of some scholar or scholars over time, or cultural practices that made their way into Islam. Otherwise, Islam itself at its core is very simple, a couple teachings, and you are done. However, on the other hand, if the answer to this question is that Islam in fact is a very complex faith, and we will explain the difference between complicated and complex. You will notice I use the word complex and not complicated. If that is the case, well then number one, I have to continuously learn about this faith. Number two, the details of my practices matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three, these details did not come from cultural practices or some scholars in the corner of some room. They came from Quran and Hadith. Therefore, tonight inshallah we want to take some time to delve into this topic, and we will pose the following questions. Number one, is Islam a simple or complex religion? And depending on what our answer is, what are the consequences of this? Number two, do the details of the religion matter, or do scholars over time end up adding all these details to the faith? Number three, how much of our hadith literature from the Ahlul Bayt pertains to and relates to the day-to-day activities that we do as a Muslim, praying, fasting, so on and so forth? Number four, are there areas of the faith that you and I overcomplicate even more than Islam ever asked us to do so? Number five, how did Imam al-Jawad, in that famous debate that he had with Yahya ibn Aktham, display for us the complexity of the religion of Islam? And number six, and finally, what objection did the Ahlul Bayt raise to the Khulafa of their times because of their lack of knowledge as it relates to the complexities of this faith? And how did they reference this issue as a reason to prove that they are supposed to be the Khulafa of the Prophet and not the Khulafa that actually stood on the pulpit of Khilafah? Today, inshallah, we will delve into these 6 questions with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. Let's begin from here. If you look at the core of Islam, you will find a teaching that's very straightforward and very simple. We call it Tawheed. This simple and straightforward teaching of Islam is in fact one of those things that appeals many times to people who revert or convert to the religion of Islam. if you've had conversations with reverts before, some of them will tell you very clearly that when I heard about the concept of Tawheed in Islam, and that a human being, unlike Christianity, is not divine, he's not God, he's not the Son of God, he's none of that kind of stuff. There's only one God and everyone else is his servant. Many reverts will tell you this was very appealing to them. Meaning that this person says, I actually always believed this in my life. I just never knew there was a religion out there that preached this idea. When I came across Islam, it's like I came across something I had lost my whole life, and finally I had found it. The concept of Tawheed, straightforward and simple in Islam. You compare that to Trinity in Christianity, you find that things are very complicated there. The 3 and 1, it's one, but in 3 bodies, one might say that you can still explain the Trinity in one way or another. But at the very least you can tell that it's not as simple and straightforward as the concept of Tawheed. This is Christianity. You look into some of the other major faiths in the world like Hinduism, which is a little difficult to define as one religion. In many ways, it's a multitude of different religions. But one concept you find in Hinduism is that these gods who are each in charge of one duty, all of a sudden they're fighting with each other, they're quarreling with each other, they're going back and forth against one another. This is a concept that one would struggle with at its very core if he wants to embrace this faith. This simplicity, you see it very clearly in the religion of Islam. At the same time, this same concept of Tawheed that is very simple, it's very straightforward, when you start to delve a little bit deeper into it and you get deeper into what this concept means and you read the verses of the Quran that describe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you, then that complexity and depth of Islam starts to show itself a whole lot more. You come across verses of the Quran sometimes, if a non-Muslim were to ask you, what does this verse even mean? You would struggle to explain to them what the answer to that question is. If you were to read the Quran, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Well, if any average non-Muslim came to us and asked any average Muslim to explain this verse of the Quran, if we've even read the verse before, we would struggle. What does that mean? Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, mathalu nurihi. His light, if I wanted to describe it to you, is like, imagine a niche, fiha misbah. There's a lamp in that niche. Al-misbahu fi zujaja. The lamp is within a glass. It almost seems as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking code. He's not, because this is the Quran, it's a book for you and I. But these are deep concepts the Quran is talking about. You move on to Surah Al-Hadid, other verses of the Quran where God describes himself. He says he is Al-Kabir Al-Muta'al, this attribute, that attribute, Awwal wal-Akhir wal-Zahir wal-Batin. These are concepts that show the depth that you have in Islam. So you start to come across this simplicity and this depth at the same time. You look at other aspects of the faith, you come to the ahkam that we have in Islam, and this complexity starts to present itself even more. Take a simple practice like the practice of praying 5 times a day. Salat, which you and I would assume is one of the simplest duties that you perform as a Muslim, if you were to ever explain this duty to a non-Muslim who's praying for the first time, you would see that it has quite a bit of complexities. It's become quite simplified for you because you've been praying most of your life, yes? But for a non-Muslim who's doing this for the first time, you would actually show them hundreds of rulings in that first 5 to 10 minutes when they are praying. You would have to tell them, okay, now we're going to say this dhikr. This is what this dhikr means. It has to be in Arabic. You have to pray at this time. You have to pray in this particular place. Your clothing has to be like this. You have to do wudu. By the way, when you're doing the wudu, you can't go upwards. You can only go downwards, and tens of other rulings. And so the complexity of the rulings of Islam start to present themselves a little bit more. So the question that comes to mind is, did these complexities develop on their own? Is this the work of scholars? Or did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala care so much about these details that He made them as part of my faith? If I sit back one day and I say, these details don't matter. The details of taharat najasat don't matter. The details of how you're supposed to pray exactly don't matter. The details of how you're supposed to fast, just be a good person, be kind to people, be nice to people, and that's it. That's what Islam is. is this meshing with what Islam wanted to teach us all along or not? In order to understand this, we have to go to Quran and Hadith. Before we do so, I want to share a little story with you. This is a personal experience, just to demonstrate this perspective, which as we get through the discussion, you will see is very common in our communities actually. And that is this: I remember a very long time ago, when I was going to begin my studies in the Hawza, I was discussing with some of our relatives about this journey that I was planning to go on, yes? And I remember sharing with one of the relatives in our, amongst our relatives in our family, older lady, very sweet, innocent, older lady. She said, Mahdi, if you're going to go study in the Hawza, go and do it. She's very encouraging, which surprised me actually. But she said, listen, when you go and study in the Hawza, make sure you don't become dry and rigid like these other scholars. Go learn the knowledge. The knowledge is very good. It's wonderful. Go learn the knowledge. But don't come out all dry and rigid. I said, I was very intrigued. What do you mean dry and rigid? What exactly is the problem? She said, these scholars, they go and study in that little Hawza thing, and then they come out. Then they say, oh, you want to talk to God? You have to talk to Him in this particular way, at this particular time. Do wudu before it. All these rulings, all this headache. So in my own innocence, I asked her, I said, so how do you talk to God? She said, nothing. I sit here on my couch, I talk to Him. Khalas, that's it. Very simple, very basic, and done. Is this what Islam wanted from us or not? When we go to Quran and Hadith, you start to uncover some of the complexities that the religion of Islam has built within it. And as an example, I want to begin with the issue of inheritance. Someone leaves this world. This person is deceased, has left behind some wealth. Okay, great. If it was you and I, what would we say? If we wanted to be very smart about it, we would say, listen, some of this has to go to the family. Some of it should go to good causes. And the rest, let's see if he asks us to give it to anybody else. Done deal. When you come to Quran and Hadith, do they deal with the topic of inheritance like this? Take a little bit of it, give it here, take a little bit, give over there, a little bit of it over there, and we're done. I wish it was like that. This is not what Islam teaches. Islam comes into the picture and says, oh, this person passed away? Oh, okay. Now come here. We're going to have some of the longest verses in all of the Quran to figure out what you're supposed to do with the wealth of this person. It's complex. So then the Quran in Surah An-Nisa starts to explain, يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. Yes, from the children, the male is supposed to receive twice as much as the female, and this, but then there's multiple children. This is what you're supposed to do. If the parents are there, this is what you're supposed to do. If the wife is there, this is what you're supposed to do. If the husband is there, this is what you're supposed to do. But then if he has a brother who's only a brother through one of his parents, this is what he's supposed to get. If you this situation, how many situations? And you find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has laid out all of these details. If it was you and I, we would be standing there, Ya Allah, don't complicate your religion so much. It's simple. He passed away. Give somebody to charity, the rest let the relatives figure it out. This is our approach. Quran and Hadith, oh, details, complexity. This is on the topic of inheritance. Then, when you read all these details, you might think to yourself, Baba, who cares about all these details? This guy's happy, that guy's happy, let them do whatever they want to do. And then the Quran comes around, and these are the verses we started the lecture with. Immediately after explaining these, the Quran says, آباؤكم أو أبناؤكم لا تدرون أيهم أقرب لكم نفعا. Your fathers or your children, you don't know which one of them is more important. In other words, you don't know which one of them is supposed to receive more or less. We know. So when we give you these complex, detailed rulings and teachings, don't come back teaching us what we're supposed to do. No. We have a wisdom. We're telling you to do it like this. فَرِيضَةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ. This is a faridah. Other words, the Quran is saying, don't you dare mess around with these rules. Faridah, this is a done deal. It's farda. Yes? It has been decreed. Ya Allah, all these details don't matter. I don't think it's too important. The next verses come. What do they say? The Quran says, listen, تِلْكَ حُدُودُ اللَّهِ. These are the red lines of God. وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, if you obey him when it comes to these things, يُدْخِلْهُ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ. Continuation of the words, وَذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. You obey him when it comes to these detailed teachings, you make your way into heaven. Okay, so what if I don't do that? He says, وَمَنْ يَعْصِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَيَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَهُ. You want to go beyond the red lines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed for you? There's going to be punishments. Ya Allah, why does it matter all these details? This one gets 1/6, this one gets 1/5, this one gets 1/3, but not from all of his wealth. And then the Quran says, مِن بَعْدِ وَصِيَّةٍ يُوصِي بِهَا أَوْ دَيْنٍ. By the way, all of these calculations is after you take into consideration his own will, أَوْ دَيْنٍ, and the loans and the debt that he had, that he owned to or owed to other people. Ya Allah, why all these complexities? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, these details matter for me. Don't sit there and say, Islam is just this basic thing. It just says be a good person and that's it. Yes, when you're explaining Islam to someone who's never been exposed to the faith, yes, it's okay. You want to simplify things. You don't want to sit there like Sheikh Mahdi and give him a full lecture for 45 minutes, yes? You don't want to make him tired the whole day. So you might sit there and say, yes, Islam teaches me to be kind to other people, to pray and fast and so on and so forth. Yes, but that is not the understanding you and I are supposed to have of the faith. You and I understanding is supposed to be much more complex. And it's because of these complexities in Islam that many times you find people have severe misunderstandings of the faith and of the religion. A great example, the topic of inheritance itself. So this person says, Shaykh, this verse you started out with, read that verse again, verse 11, Surah An-Nisa. يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. God says give twice as much to the male children. Misogyny. The patriarchy is attacking again. We have to stop it immediately. This is what happens when you have a simple understanding of the faith. When you get into the complexities of the faith, have a deeper understanding of the faith, then a lot of these questions never even come up. Now, there are certain areas of Islamic law that over time they might change. This is a reality. Islamic law, in our school of thought as well as other schools of thought, has always changed to a certain limit over time. Are there areas of Islamic law that relate to men and women that might change over time? Absolutely, no doubt about it. You think scholars 1,000 years ago had the same ruling on music, for example, that they have today? No. Usually there's a trajectory to these rulings, yes. So that might happen. Some of these things are set in stone though. When the Quran says 2 times the ratio of 2 to 1, when it comes to your children, that's not changing. No marja is going to come and say, well, the Quran didn't know what it was talking about. The times have changed, so we're going to change this. That's not going to happen. So you say, this doesn't make sense. Why the male? But then when you have a more complex understanding of the faith, these types of questions come up less and less for you. Because when you understand the complexities, you see, in inheritance, sometimes there are situations, there's a male, there's a female, they get exactly the same amount. But I thought patriarchy, this, that, always males are supposed to be... No, it's not like that. That was your assumption. That was your understanding. Someone fed that to you. So the Quran says, وَلِأَبَوَيْهِ لِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ. The father of the mayyit, and the mother of the mayyit, both of them get 1/6 in some scenarios. This is not every scenario. But wait, one of them is a male, the other one is a female. I thought the male is always most important and this. No, that was your understanding. Sometimes you'll have a senior male in the family and you'll have a young little girl in the family. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the senior male gets nothing. The little 3-year-old girl gets everything. If this mayyit had a brother, yes, a brother, senior in age, 40, 50, 60, whatever the age might be, yes? And he also had like a 5-year-old girl. Listen, the girl doesn't understand what's happening right now, maybe. Yes, she doesn't comprehend fully what's happening. She's running around, she's playing. The Quran says all of the wealth has to go to the child. As long as the child is there, nothing goes to the brother. But wait a second. He's male and he's senior. He's like 10 times her age. And the Quran says, yeah, I don't care. Everything has to go to who? Everything has to go to the daughter. See, when you understand the complexities of the faith, a lot of these questions you have start to disappear. When you understand Islam just in a very simple, basic way, then yes, a lot of questions come to mind. You move on from the topic of inheritance to the topic of charity. Ya Allah, I want to give my wealth in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in your path, for good causes. Can I just go and do it? He says, yeah, you can do it just whichever way you like. That's sadaqah. But if you want to give your zakat, here's the rules. If you want to give your khums, these are the rules. You want to give kafara, here are the rules. You want to give zakatul fitra, here are the rules. When you're giving zakatul fitra, it has to be food. Ya Allah, why all of these details? Why overcomplicate the faith? He says, no, it has to be food. You're giving this person money? Okay, you tell them to go and buy food with it. This is part of the rulings of our maraj, yes? Now, if he gets the food and he decides whatever he wants to do with it, that's up to him. But zakatul fitra is supposed to be what? It's supposed to be food. If you give the money, you tell the person, listen, I'm giving you the money, so food is purchased with this for yourself if you're faqir or someone else who is faqir. All these detailed rulings and guidelines. Ya Allah, why all of this? And this idea, you will find it very much in our communities. People will be very dismissive of the details in Islam. They'll sit back. Baba, don't complicate the religion so much. Just be a good person, that's it. That's all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came to tell us. When you go to Quran and Hadith, you find, no, they had a very different approach. Now, before we move on and get further into the discussion, there is one disclaimer I need to mention, and that is this. There are areas in our faith where Islam's approach was very easygoing and very simple, certain areas. And then we decided that those areas that are simple need to be overcomplicated. So they told this person, listen, if this person that you're dealing with is Muslim, and he said his meat is halal, dhabiha halal, you can take it. No, I need to see his birth certificate. Where is he? Where's his father's birth certificate? What's his driver's license number? Where did this one get it from the other one? From the other one. Where's the other one? Bring the other one. Baba, your marja said this is enough. No, Shaykhna, I take precaution. Okay, great, you take precaution. Let me ask you something. You're taking this precaution, sometimes making life a little bit more difficult for the people around you. Do you also take precaution in other areas of life? Or is it just this? When you're talking about someone else, you're making a comment about someone else. Do you ever take precaution and say, this might be hurtful, let me not say it right now? Has that ever occurred? I don't think that happens. You only seem to take precaution on certain areas because it makes you feel spiritual. You were praying your salat. Did you ever take precaution on your salat maybe, for example? No, you didn't. You were listening to this music. You didn't know, is this music halal or haram? Did you ever take precaution there? No, it didn't bother you. So in no other area did you ever feel compelled to take precaution. When it came to this one, no. We have to take all of the precautions. There's something wrong here. Something's not adding up here. Did you ever talk about someone who wasn't in the majlis and then stop yourself midway and say, maybe I shouldn't say this. Maybe it's ghaiba. Maybe it's backbiting. Let me take precaution. Did you ever take precaution like this? No, he never took precaution like this. But then the gelatin he has to figure out. All the way to the source, to the poor pig, who the gelatin they got it from, he has to ask him, are you dhabiha halal or not? There are areas of the faith that are simple, and then we decided what? To overcomplicate. And then there are areas of the faith that are complex, and we say, no, these details don't matter. You see what we did with Islam? The injustice that we did with Islam. This person is getting married. Sheikh, please tell me all the rulings that there are for marriage. The nikah, how exactly the nikah? How many witnesses do we need? Does the witness need to be this person, that person? I tell him, it's not that complicated. Islam has made nikah very easy and simple, actually. Islam's approach is very easy. Yes, there's two witnesses, so on and so forth, yes. But Sheikh, are we sure? I want to make sure my nikah is like a really, strong nikah. Baba, Islam didn't overcomplicate this one. But then the other one that Islam did have complex rulings on, he doesn't care about at all. This is the problem that we have. Recite a salawat, please. So let us now sit with the Ahlul Bayt a little bit and see, is their understanding of Islam a complex understanding or just a very basic, simple understanding and done? When you go to the Ahlul Bayt, you find their lives were actually full of moments of people coming and asking them questions constantly. And almost never did they sit there and tell someone, listen, it's not that complicated. Go, stop coming and asking me questions. Go, it's enough. Just follow your hearts. Have a pure heart and that's enough. Go. Almost never did they say that. You know what did happen a lot in the lives of the Ahlul Bayt? What happened a lot was, Yabna Rasulullah, what do I do in this situation? Yabna Rasulullah, what do I do in that situation? Yabna Rasulullah, I went to Hajj and in Hajj this happened. Is my Hajj okay? Yabna Rasulullah, I went and I was praying. Yes, you don't want to become obsessive, compulsive, so on. And that's another extreme, of course, yes? But at a basic level, people used to come to Ahlul Bayt, and when they came to Ahlul Bayt with their questions, Ahlul Bayt never said, yeah, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, who cares? No, they came to Imam Sadiq. Look at our hadith literature. The 4 main books of hadith that we have in our school of thought. The majority of the narrations is on how you're supposed to live your life on a day-to-day basis. Open Al-Kafi, open Istibsar, Tadhib, these books, yes. The majority of them are people coming to the Imams and asking, what am I supposed to do in this situation? What am I supposed to do in that situation? And the Ahlul Bayt never looked at them and said, yeah, it doesn't matter. Yes, the religion of Islam is not complicated. Complicated meaning you don't know what to do at the end of the day. That doesn't apply to Islam. Islam is not a vague religion. Sometimes people say, oh, ya Shaykh, I want to get closer to Allah. Please tell me how I get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you say, oh yeah, just, do the wajib and stay away from the harams. No, but I want to know, how do I get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Baba, the religion is not complicated. It is complex though. There's a difference between these two. It is complex. When you sit with the Ahlul Bayt, their understanding of the religion was complex. The Prophet, when he came, you think the Prophet said, okay, I'm going to pray, but you guys pray however you want to pray. I'm just going to pray based on whatever my heart tells me. No, he said, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray the way you see me praying. Now I ask you, are the details of prayer important for the Prophet? Of course. What? Na'udhu billah, the Prophet had nothing better to do with his life than to come and show us all these details. Imam Sadiq had nothing better to do in his life than to sit in Kufa, in Medina, other places and answer people's questions. No, it's because these detailed matters to him. That's why he answered all of these questions. So for the Ahlul Bayt, all of these details were important. The Prophet, when he goes for Hajj, the final Hajj that he goes on, Hajjatul Wida', what did the Quran tell him? The Quran told the Prophet, وَأَذِّن فِي النَّاسِ. Go and announce to people that you're going for Hajj. Why? Why announce to everyone? Because everyone has to come and see the details of how the Prophet does Hajj. Important. These details are important. So then the narration says the Prophet came, he came to Miqat, he did Ihram. They describe for us what his Ihram used to look like. Then he carried his Qurbani with him. Then he got to the other steps. Then he came to Safa and Marwa. You know what he said when he came to Safa and Marwa? He said, we will start our sa'i between Safa and Marwa from Safa, because the Quran mentions Safa first and then Marwa. I promise you, if you and I were there, we would sit there and say, Muhammad, don't overcomplicate your faith. Muhammad, what is this? Don't overthink it. Just be a good person at your hearts and that's it. No, these details matter to the Prophet. They matter to the Ahlul Bayt. And I want to mention this before we move on. As long as you and I are ignoring these detailed teachings of Islam, our spiritual wings will always be tied. In Islam, spirituality is not just about the heart. It's also about what you do every single day. And when the Ahlul Bayt said, when you're doing wudu, only go downwards and don't go upwards, that means if a person knowingly goes against this, just because he doesn't care, spiritually he cannot grow. He's going to be tied. Otherwise, why would they emphasize this? Otherwise, if it wasn't important for them, why Imam al-Baqir, Imam al-Sadiq take so much of their time explain all these detailed rules? Because these things play a role in your spirituality. Following these details play a role in your spirituality. How many times do you hear people say, yes, Sheikh, these are all details, but at the end of the day, this is not what Islam is about. No, this is part of Islam too. If you want to grow, this is part of Islam too. Yes, this is not to say that if someone doesn't practice these details, their faith is not worth anything. We're not saying that either. But we're saying this is not how the Ahlul Bayt wanted us to practice their faith. They wanted us to practice the faith with the details that it comes with. And you see this in the most beautiful way in the debates that Imam al-Jawad has with Yahya ibn Aktham, the Qadhi al-Qudat of the time of Ma'mun al-Abbasi. Before we continue, let us recite a loud salawat, please. These details, you see it very clearly in this debate. What was happening during the time of Imam al-Jawad that displays for us the complexity of the faith that we have. There came a point where Ma'mun la'natullahi alayhi was at a point he wanted to marry off his daughter forcefully to Imam al-Jawad as a means to have surveillance in the house. It doesn't get better than that. You have someone living with this person, she can tell you every single time who comes, who goes, who does he speak to, so on and so forth. Forcefully, he forced Imam al-Jawad into this marriage. And Imam al-Jawad, of course, because he knew his life was at stake, he gave into it, he accepted this marriage. Ma'mun comes to his own people and he says, listen, I am marrying my daughter off to Abu Ja'far al-Thani. Abu Ja'far al-Awwal is who? Al-Imam al-Baqir. Abu Ja'far al-Thani, referring to Al-Imam al-Jawad. I'm marrying her off to Imam al-Jawad. The people around Ma'mun, his own friends, they came to him, they said, Ma'mun, don't do this. You're going to marry off your daughter. What if the role of Khilafah after you reaches him? You know, we're going to be in trouble. We worked so hard to get our hands on this Khilafah. Now, he's going to marry your daughter. He's going to inherit this right. Don't do this. He said, no, I have my own plans. I have my own reasons to do this. They said, okay, fine. We have another objection. So what's the objection? They said, we have another objection. Don't marry her off to this child, because Imam al-Jawad is like 10 years old roughly at this point. Don't marry off to this child. Ma'mun came. He said, listen, you tried to change my opinion about marrying her off to him. I'm not going to listen to you. It doesn't matter what you say. They said, no, wait until he gets older so he can at least have some knowledge. He knows nothing. Ma'mun said, Wallah, huwa a'lamu minkum. He knows more than you guys. They said, we don't take it. We're not going to accept your opinion. He said, listen, test him. Go ahead, give it a try. So these guys said, sure, we'll test it, no problem. There's a bunch of adults and a 10-year-old child. We'll go for it, no problem. This is an amazing opportunity. So they went, they said, well, we have to get our most knowledgeable person. We're going to call Yahya ibn Aktham, the Qadhi al-Qudat. You know, you have judges and then you have the Supreme Court. Yes, this is like the Supreme Court of Ma'mun, I put it that way. Yahya ibn Aktham comes, they put together the whole gathering. We would assume hundreds of people have gathered for this moment. Yahya ibn Aktham enters, Imam al-Jawad enters, he sits, and Ma'mun has prepared a place for him right beside him, because this is the game that he plays. This is what Ma'mun does. This is how he shows. We're on the same team, quote unquote, yes? Behind the scenes, of course, it's a different situation, a different story. When Yahya ibn Aktham comes, he turns to Ma'mun. He says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, can I ask Abu Ja'far a question? And Ma'mun, because he's already choosing the winning side, he says, don't ask me for permission, ask him for permission. So Yahya turns to Imam al-Jawad, Ya Abu Ja'far, can I ask you a question? He said, Sal in shi'ta. Ask away if you like. Look at the simplicity in this question. Look at the complexity in the answer. He said, Ya Abu Ja'far, I have a very simple question for you. ما تقول جعلت فداك. What is your opinion في محرم قتل صيدا? What's your opinion if someone has done ihram, it's muhrim, and now he kills an animal? If they put that question in front of you and I, what would we say? Either it's okay, no problem, or better not to, or no, he did a bad thing, haram, he needs to repent. These are the three options we would choose, huh? Imam al-Jawad turned back to him. He said, you asked a very good question, but before I answer your question, I have some questions for you. So what are these questions? He said, this muhrim that you say, qatala saydan, he killed this animal. I have some questions. Number one, aliman kana al-muhrim aw jahilan? Did he know the ruling or he didn't know the ruling? Number two, this person, qatalahu fi hillin aw haram, did he kill him near Masjid al-Haram or he killed him outside? Number three, this person, qatalahu amdan aw khatan, he killed him on purpose or by mistake. Number four, hurran kana al-muhrim am abdan, was he a free man or was he a servant of another household? Number five, fil layl qatalahu am fin nahar, did he kill him during the day or did he kill him during the night? Number six, mubtadi'an bil qatli aw mu'ida, he went for it straight one time or he had to come back to it over and over again. Was it just him or was there a whole group of people? Was it a bird or was it not a bird? If it was a bird, was it a small bird or was it a bigger bird? And he continued, finally end with this. He said, muhrim, you said muhrim. Muhrim bil umrah and bil hajj. And the narration says, Yahya was just standing there and didn't know what to say. This simple question that they put in front of us, you and I might sit there and say, oh yeah, it's probably better not to do. Why did he do it? Very bad person. He shouldn't have done this. Yes? And Imam al-Jawad says, no, there's complexity to this faith. So what does that mean for you and I? There's a number of conclusions that this brings about for us. Before we get to those conclusions and we end, this, brothers and sisters, is one of the reasons why the Ahlul Bayt, they had claim to Khilafah against the Khulafa. One of the reasons they used to say, we are supposed to be Khalifa and not you, is because they did not have knowledge of the complexities of the faith. This was the claim of the Ahlul Bayt. So Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he was finally recognized as Khalifa, the narration says he came, he sat on the mimbar, مُتَعَمِّمًا بِعِمَامَةِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, he was wearing the imamah of the Prophet. He sat there, he said, سَلُونِ قَبْلَ أَن تَفْقِدُونِ, ask me before you lose me. فَإِنَّ عِنْدِي عِلْمَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخِرِينَ, because with me lies the knowledge of those who came before and the knowledge of those who are going to come after. I ask you, if religion of Islam is a simple, basic religion with a couple moral teachings and that's done, what deep knowledge is Ali even talking about then? When Ali sits there and says, Saluni amma shi'tum, ask me about whatever you like. This means the religion that you're going to ask him about is very complex. It is deep. It has detailed rulings, it has detailed teachings. Otherwise, what skill is it to sit there and say, Saluni qabla an tafqid, ask me before you lose me? The very fact that Ali ibn Abi Talib would raise objection to the Khulafa that you're not supposed to be Khalifa, I'm supposed to be Khalifa because you lack the knowledge, that in and of itself is the greatest proof that the religion of Islam is a complex religion. It's not just a simple religion. You come and you learn a couple things about it and khalas, that's it, I'm going to move on with life. That's not how it's supposed to be. What does that mean for you and I, brothers and sisters? Number one, it means that you and I have to be lifelong learners of the knowledge of Islam. Number two, it means the details in the faith matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't be dismissive. Oh, it doesn't matter. Just have a pure heart. This is not the way Ahlul Bayt taught us. And number three, these details, they come straight from Quran and Hadith. These are not some cultural practices that are added to the faith until they reached us up until this point, or the work of this scholar or that scholar. No, these are coming to us from Quran and Hadith. Over the past 5 nights, we've laid the foundation, inshallah, to get into some of the individual topics that we want to discuss over the following 5 nights. Tomorrow, inshallah, we'll begin with the topic of music, which is a detailed topic that we'll discuss over the following 3 nights, inshallah. Let us take a moment to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all of your marhumin and marhumat, especially the marhumin and marhumat of all of those brothers and sisters who are working hard these days, all these volunteers. I see volunteers sometimes standing the whole program. It makes me feel bad, honestly, because of how much effort they put in. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all of their families as well as yourselves. Rahimallahu man qara'a Surah Al-Fatihata ma'a as-salawati ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Bismillah.
And a third one for the hastening of the appearance of Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Faraj. Allah. Before we begin our majlis, brothers and sisters, we share three or four announcements, inshallah. First, we will be holding 2 Q&A sessions with Sheikh Mahdi Rastani. The first one will be held right before the English program tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for those who wish to attend, inshallah. Second, we ask our beloved community to help support us in building a better future for our youth by supporting the Taha Foundation Community Center through their generous donations. There is a donation box, a specific donation box next to the entrance tables. Every contribution, regardless of its size, plays a vital role in the successful completion of the project to come, inshallah. Third, if you would like to help contribute financially towards Ashura activities and future Islamic work, there are also specific donation boxes at the entrances and in the hallways. Please see one of the organizing brothers and they can facilitate your donations, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your deeds. For the brothers and sisters who have not heard of the constant and recent burnings of the Holy Quran in Sweden, today we stand firmly to assert that this desecration is unacceptable, that its roots are terror and intolerance and hatred. And if disrespect were to a believer, it wouldn't be accepted, then how would it be for the book of those believers and for the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Those who disapprove of the recent burnings of the Holy Quran, please help recite 3 loud salawats. A final reminder for us all by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, or a nightly reminder for us all, of why the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam want us to continue to commemorate. And we promise that every night we recite a hadith. It has been narrated in Al-Fusul Al-Muhimma fi Usul Al-Amma that Imam Ja'far As-Sadiq alayhi salam once asked an old man whether he visits the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. The man said, "Yes, I frequently do." The Imam alayhi salam replied, "That is blood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands justice for. All lamenting and grief is despised or makruh, except the lamenting and grief upon the killing of Hussein, for it is rewarded for." Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please join me in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open our hearts to learn the rank of our Imam. اللهم عرفني نفسك فإنك إن لم تعرفني نفسك لم أعرف رسولك. اللهم عرفني رسولك فإنك إن لم تعرفني رسولك لم أعرف حجتك. اللهم عرفني حجتك فإنك إن لم تعرفني حجتك ضللت عن ديني. Please help me welcome the reciter of the Husseini Majlis, Brother Hassan Bazoon, with a loud salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
رحم الله من أعاد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. Brothers and sisters, just before we begin, yesterday I was asked to add to the announcements of Brother Musa. There is a very big number of water bottles that are being left opened by the seats. So the brothers who clean the hall have asked that if you please make sure that you take the water bottles with you so that that water is not wasted. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله. Let's take our hearts to Imam Hussein عليه السلام. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة. May the peace of Allah be upon the benevolent Hussein. May the peace of Allah be upon you, Aba Abdullah, as you are His vast mercy and the salvation of this ummah. مظلوم يا حسين، غريب يا حسين، شهيد يا حسين. A stranger you were in Karbala, ya thirsty you were in Karbala, ya martyred you fell in Karbala, ya. May the peace of Allah be upon you and your honorable family who stood with you and died by your side in Karbala. قال الرضا عليه السلام يا ابن شبيب إن كنت باكيا لشيء فابكي للحسين بن علي عليه السلام فإنه ذبح كما يذبح الكبش. الإمام الرضا عليه السلام said to one of his companions, if you are to cry for anything, then cry for Hussein, the son of Ali, for he was butchered the way cattle is butchered. Hussein, a name that revives a callous heart. Hussein, a name that raises a nation proud. Hussein, a legacy unmatched in praise. Hussein, in the heart of believers, a beacon for faith. Ya Aba Abdullah, with your name, without your name, lost we'd be. But through your love, our souls are free. And with every tear we shed so dear, and every beat from our heart's core, you'll hear us chant your beloved name. Hussein, 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 together. Hussein, Hussein. Sallallahu alayka Aba Abdullah. Before we enter the majlis, I would like to do a brief overview, as our discussion tonight and our majlis tonight revolves around al-Banin. Karbala teaches many lessons and the stories of many heroes. Some are known and some are unsung. One of those is al-Banin, the wife of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the mother of Al-Abbas and his three brothers. After Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra alayha salam was killed, and after time had passed, Imam Ali alayhi salam spoke to his brother whose name is Aqil. And Aqil was known to know the lineage of the Arab tribes. Imam Ali said, Ya Aqil, find me a wife that comes from the most gallant and strongest of the Arab, so she may bear me a son who would be a great knight. And in his ilm, Imam Ali alayhi salam was preparing a supporter for his daughter Zainab and his son Al-Hasan and his son Al-Hussein. So Aqil suggested to Imam Ali a lady named Fatima bint Huzam al-Kulabiyya, known as al-Banin. And he said she is very pious, and she comes from a family of brave, strong warriors, and she has an honorable lineage that has not been tainted. And so Imam Ali alayhi salam married al-Banin. Now her name was Fatima bint Huzam. When Imam Ali alayhi salam, after a short time after he had married her, al-Banin came to Imam Ali alayhi salam, and she says, I have a favor to ask. I don't want you to call me by my name Fatima. I would prefer if you call me by al-Banin. And Imam Ali alayhi salam asked her why. So she said, every time you call me Fatima, I see signs of grief in the faces of your children as they remember their mother Fatima al-Zahra, yani al-Imam al-Hasan wal-Hussein wa Zainab. And it pains me to see grief in their face. So I prefer if you call me by al-Banin. Since the first days when she started living with the children of Fatima al-Zahra, she was dedicated to their well-being and considered herself in service of them. And al-Banin had four children. The first of them was Al-Abbas ibn Ali, and then Ja'far, Abdullah, and Uthman. al-Banin raised her sons to respect and revere the children of Fatima alayha salam, And she taught her sons, particularly Al-Abbas, to always address their older brothers Al-Hassan wal-Hussein as my leaders. And she taught them to always guard and protect them, and also Zainab alayha salam. And so the time passed, and Imam Ali alayhi salam passed away, and Imam Al-Hassan alayhi salam passed away, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam was getting ready to go to Kufa. And al-Banin, she was not able to go. Now some of the scholars say she was older and was sick. There's another opinion that says she was caring for the baby of Al-Abbas and she did not want to go on the trip with the baby. But a third opinion says the reason why she did not go to Karbala is because she did not want to add to the burden of her sons when they have to protect Hussein and Zainab alayhum as-salam. But she had always emphasized, especially to Al-Abbas, always stand with your brother and sister and guard them. And the tragedy and the days passed, and the tragedy of Karbala and the massacre happened and took place. And the women and the children were captivated afterwards, and they were taken shackled to Kufa. Then they were dragged across the desert to Damascus, and after a harrowing trip, they made their way back to Medina Jaddihim. When they were on the outskirts of Medina, there was a guy traveling with them. His name was Bishr. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam tells Bishr, go enter the city before us and announce the tragedy of Hussein through reciting poetry. So Bishr leads before the caravan and he goes to Medina. He stands in the center. He says, Ya ahla ya Yathrib la muqama lakum biha. قتل الحسين فأدمعي مدرار. People of Yathrib, you no longer belong here. Hussein was killed, thus eyes flow with tears. Hussein was killed, thus eyes flow with tears. His body remained in Karbala over the sand exposed. Then his head roamed the lands atop the spears. The people gathered around Bishr and started asking for details. And as Bishr was telling the story, a respected lady carrying a baby on her shoulder made her way between the crowd, and as she walked, the crowd just moved away until she came close to Bishr. Bishr asked, who is this lady? She says, what happened to my master Hussein, ya Bishr? He asks, who is this lady? They say, this is al-Banin. This is the mother of Abbas. She lost 4 sons in Karbala. But he's perplexed. Why is she asking me about Hussein if she's lost 4 sons in Karbala? So he says, Ya al-Banin, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك جعفر. He says, Ya al-Banin, may Allah reward your patience over the death of your son Ja'far. She says, I asked you about Hussein. He says, may Allah reward your patience over your son Uthman. She says, I asked you about Hussein. How is Hussein? Tell me of Hussein. He says, عظم الله لك الأجر. May Allah reward your patience over your son Abdullah. She says, Ya Bishr, tell me about Hussein. Then he says, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك العباس. May Allah reward your patience over your son Abbas. She says, Ya Bishr, you have severed my heart. But I am asking you about Hussein, the light of my eyes, Nuru Aini, Habib al-Hussein. Then he says, may Allah reward your patience over the death of Hussein. Hussein was killed and his head was raised on a spear. al-Banin fell to the ground calling, Wa Husayna, Wa Habiba, together with her, Wa Husayna, Wa Habiba. They fell before him one after another. 3 sons, Ya al-Banin, died for Hussein together. But one more, but so long as Abbas lived, Hussein was still intact. Yet Ya al-Banin, when Abbas was killed, it broke Hussein's back. May all 4 of my sons be spared for him. My master Hussein was the light of my eyes. And even though my sons were torn at every limb, for Hussein I will shed every tear and doleful cries. Yes, after they arrived in Medina and after Sayyida Zainab settled back into her home, someone came knocking the door. Sayyida Zainab told her housekeeper, don't let anyone come unless it's one of the people or the ladies that were with us in Karbala. So the housekeeper goes back and she says, Lady Zainab does not wish to see anyone unless they were amongst the ladies that were in Karbala. So the lady at the door says, tell Zainab, I am her partner in the sorrow. I am al-Banin, I am the mother of Abbas. Yes, this is the noble lady who's carrying the pain of sacrificing 4 sons in Karbala. Yet what broke her heart the most was the death of her Imam Hussein alayhi salam. al-Banin enters the house. Sayyida Zainab comes to her. al-Banin looks at her and she sees that her features have changed. She says, Anti Zainabul Hashimiyya? Are you Zainab from the family of Hashim, a noble family, a respected family? Zainab says, Bal quli Zainab al-Masbiya. Indeed, now I have become Zainab that was taken captive. And she embraces al-Banin. She says, may Allah reward your patience over the death of your 4 sons. al-Banin says, may Allah reward your patience over the martyrdom of your brother Hussein. If you were in Karbala to see what we've seen, as if Zainab is speaking. If you were in Karbala to see what we've seen, Hussein was butchered and his men covered in a bloody sheen. Not only him, but his baby was also not spared. Then they attacked us and the orphans ran scared. Ya Zainab, where was Abbas in all of this? She asked, al-Banin asked, tell me Zainab, what was Abbas's stance in Karbala? Did he retreat or did he advance? Did he fight with Hussein until the last chance? Tell me, tell me. Why do you want to know? Tell me. For to Abbas I've always said, if harm comes to Hussein before you're dead, I'll never pardon you. I've always said, Ya Abbas. Zainab replies, Ya Abbas. Ya Abbas, rest assured, find peace. Abbas fought like a lion against feeble beasts. So long as he lived, Hussein's army was fine. But when Abbas fell, it broke Hussein's spine. Ya Abbas, I'll tell you more. Abbas fell, but before he was killed, he called to Hussein and his heart is torn. Brother, brother, brother Hussein, brother Hussein, forgive me. Ya Abbas, the water spilled, as if the heart of al-Banin speaks to her son Abbas. Son Abbas, his mother cried, rest in grace, my joy and pride. You've given me honor in Fatima's eyes, that before her son is killed, my son dies. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, we ask you and call upon you by your greatest name, the mightiest, the most honorable, to send your blessings and praise upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, and that you accept of us our worship. We ask that you send your mercy upon the dead of the believing men and women. We ask you by Hussein, the martyr, and his mother and father, whoever was in this gathering of ours and has a need, that you fulfill it for them, in particular those who have requested that we do dua on their behalf. We ask you, whoever in this gathering of ours and is sick or has a sick family member, that you heal them and cure their ailments. We pray that you relieve the suffering of all those oppressed and that you hasten the return of our beloved 12th Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah, and that you write our names amongst his supporters and aiders. We ask that you protect our scholars and maraja and protect the Muslim Ummah against evildoers conspiring against them. May the peace of Allah be upon the noble Hussein, the children of Hussein, and the companions and the family of Hussein. May the peace of Allah be upon the noble Abbas and the honorable Zainab. We'll recite inshaAllah Ziyarat Warith briefly together. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya warith Adam safwatillah. Assalamu alayka ya warith Nuh nabiyillah. Assalamu alayka ya warith Ibrahim khalilillah. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله بأني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن، بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض. فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، قصدت حرمك من بعيد وقصدت مشهدك. أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا فيها طويلة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين، وعلى أرواح الشهداء والعلماء ومن مات على ولاية مولانا علي بن أبي طالب، ولتعجيل الظهور وقضاء الحوائج. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
Ten years ago, we embarked on a mission to revive the true values of Islam within our community. Empowered by the faith and dedication of our volunteers and your endless support, our projects impacted the lives of tens of thousands in our community and beyond. Since day one, our effort was recognized as one being led by the youth, and the youth have always been at the center of our focus. Our goal was and remains to instill Islamic values that enlighten the young generation, strengthen their identity, and empower them to become successful leaders in the future. But as the times we are in become more challenging every day, and our values are consistently under attack, we cannot stand still, and having a facility that allows for bigger and better projects became a necessity. Alhamdulillah, today, Taha Foundation, the parent organization of the Ashura project, and Al-Mustafa Scouts is pleased, honored, and excited to announce the next milestone in our journey. As of May 5th, we have completed the purchase of the upcoming Taha Foundation Community Center, a 48,000 square foot facility that has the amenities we need to improve and expand our programs, including a lecture hall, classrooms, a gym, and a spacious outdoor gathering area. While we are able to secure the purchase of this building, a lot of work is still required to transform it into the state-of-the-art facility that serves our needs in the most effective and efficient way possible. Today, more than ever, and for the sake of our kids and families, we're asking for your support in raising the funds needed for this project. Our fundraising target is $580,000 that will go towards renovations, repairs, furniture, and equipment. Your contribution, no matter how small, will make a significant difference. Join us as we embark on the next stage of our journey. With Allah's guidance and your support, we can empower the next generation of leaders and build a better future for our youth. Donate today.